CWPA Remote Professional Edition, where we take a look at water polo players and where they are today.
This man was a member of the Slippery Rock University men's varsity water polo team. After graduating in 1983 with degrees in business management and business administration, he began a 34-year career with a software consulting company. And now, he is the CEO and owner of that company. I'm so very pleased to be joined today by Russ Thompson. Russ, thanks so much for appearing on CWPA Remote.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you. How and why did you end up choosing Slippery Rock?
Well, one of my high school water polo buddies had graduated ahead of me, and he went down and he had met with Doc Hunkler, Richard Hunkler, and he was so impressed with Hunkler that he came back to high school, and he called my mother first, and he said, you know, I don't know what Russ's plans are, but he's likely not going to Harvard or Yale, and I'm not sure how I should take that. But he said, I think Russ would be perfect for Slippery Rock, and what I have learned by already being there for a couple of years, have Russ take a look. So we went down, and my mother took me down, and we took a visit, and we met with Doc Hunkler, and the university showed us around their campus, and man, it just seemed really nice. So that's how I ended up there. Mark Bliley is his name, and Mark is primarily responsible for me getting to the Rock in the first place. But the truth is, when I showed up at Slippery Rock, I was going to be a swimmer, and I had no intentions of playing water polo because, frankly, I wasn't very good. I mean, in fact, so many players were so much stronger and more capable than me that I decided, hey, I'm just going to be a breaststroker and go swim. So, and then I met Hunkler at a water polo practice, and he said, oh, I understand you played water polo before. And I said, yeah, I played. I'm not very good. He said, well, why don't you let me be the judge of that and let me work with you? So that was the beginning and the genesis of me getting to the Rock in the first place.
All right. So do you remember your first practice or set of practices?
I do. I was completely deer in the headlights. I came from a high school program that really didn't know anything about a contemporary way of playing water polo in NC2A, at NC2A level, collegiate level, much less Hunkler's level. So I pretty much sat on the bench and watched everybody a lot. And I got playing time on the B squad. And you know, I won't say that it was a slow process. It was culture shock, absolute culture shock. And, but I had a passion for it. I swam all year round. I played water polo anytime I could, and slowly but surely, the lights started to come on for me.
And how about your first game? Do you remember that?
I remember my first game. In fact, we played, Hunkler's women were just a powerhouse. We had 2 or 3 women from the U.S. national team on the program, and all of the freshmen that came into the program, their very first game was to play the women's team. To which, you know, some men didn't think that was such a cool idea, or they thought it was just, oh, well, you know, we'll have to take it easy on those poor girls. Well, my first game was against those women, 2 of which were on the national team, and I got one heck of an education that day. It was a very humbling experience. We summarily got our butts kicked, and that was the beginning of the learning process with Hunkler and what I remember of my first real game.
So did you score your first goal in that game, or did you have to wait?
I had to wait.
and do you remember that first goal?
Not really. It doesn't stand out. I remember my first goal in a championship game.
Okay.
That was pretty exciting. We had come down. We were at Navy for the Mid-Atlantic Championships, and I was, I think, number 7 player on the team. You know, we were playing a 30-meter pool, a big pool, and little old Slippery Rock was one of those shallow, deep 25-yard pools. So Hunkler's strategy was to take the entire squad and sub us out as often as he could and as frequently as he could to help keep us fresh, because the Navy boys were going to beat the tar out of us coming up and down the pool. So it was a minute and a half into the game, and I'm on the inside post, and my buddy Scott Strong throws me a pass, and boom, I score the first goal in the Mid-Atlantic Championships. That was a notable goal for me. I scored a lot of goals, of course, playing water polo, but that was a big one for me.
Well, do you have any, other than that memory, do you have a single best memory from your time on the Rock squad?
I think, the games that I got involved with at a higher level are always memorable. But the most memorable thing that I can tell you is just working with Hunkler in the first place. After that particular tournament, we were in the van going back. Navy beat us by, I don't know, 4 or 5 goals. But we were going back, driving back to Slippery Rock from Annapolis, and Hunkler remembered me on day one, and this was my senior year. He said, "Well, homegrown is what he used to call the ones that he built, like me. Well, homegrown, we came a long way, didn't we?" And man, I couldn't get the smile off my face. And he was so dedicated to taking people like me and building them and rebuilding them, tearing them down and rebuilding and creating great players. Now, Hunkler had a lot of raw talent that came in from California, and he earned that through hard work and dedication. But I most certainly wasn't one of those people, and there were lots and lots of people on the Rock that weren't like that. They were Hunkler's homegrowns, and we are all proud. We call it Rock Nation. The water polo players are in very close contact with one another still on Facebook and in other ways. And in fact, if the COVID-19 treats us well, we have a Hunkler passed a couple of years ago. We have an alumni meeting gathering planned for this June, late June, if the vaccines work out and if it's safe to do. So those are my most memorable things, is the camaraderie that he built, the excellence, he was especially good to women in particular. He was a Title IX champion. He was very much involved in promoting women's sports, and his women's team just did extraordinarily well as a result. The ultimate advocate for women, Richard Hunkler was. So those are the big fond memories. Any
unusual or amusing stories that you remember?
Oh my God, all of them. We had a guy on the team who has passed. His name was Rocky, and Rocky marched to his own beat. He routinely lived on campus on a farm in a teepee, believe it or not. And one year he lived on a farm. He just didn't have any money, and he got his education at the Rock, and he just lived his own lifestyle. So Rocky lived in a bread truck one year. He lived on a farm in a teepee one year, and I mean, there are just war stories to go around about all the escapades of Slippery Rock water polo, but Rocky stands out as one of those unique characters. And we miss our Rocky. He passed a couple of years ago, but everybody that knew and loved Rocky, even to this very day, the legend continues, because players that were 10 years later on the team that had no idea who Rocky even was, they got to hear Rocky stories.
Right. Well, before we get into what you're doing day to day now, tell us about how you got into the field you're in and how you ended up signing up with the company.
Well, I was a business major at Slippery Rock, so when I came out of the Rock, I did what most business majors do, and that, unless you're in accounting or in a technical degree, I started selling. And I joined a software company, and the software company sold software in the vertical market of credit unions. So those things that would occur in a credit union, a credit union is like a bank, so checking and savings and credit card processing and all that sort of stuff. So I began selling software in that market. And to make a long story a little shorter, I ended up a couple of years later, after leaving that company, selling for IBM a product called the Doctor's Office Manager, which was a practice management software system out of Chicago. And I got beat in my very first sale by a guy by the name of Don Birish in Philadelphia. So I called him because I wasn't married to anything at that point, and said, well, hey, what do you have that's so great that you just beat me and this beautiful product from IBM? And he said, well, funny enough, I used to work for IBM, and now I've got my own company, and I would like to come meet with you and see if you'd like to join my little company. It was just a startup. In fact, there were only 3 of us. And so he flew to my hometown here in Erie, and he said, would you like to join me? He laid out what he had planned, and I said, sure, I'll join you. And, I was all full of piss and vinegar, and he said, do you have any long-term aspirations? And I said, yeah, one day I want to own your company. and he kind of laughed, and well, and I love it because here we are 35 years later, and I actually own his company. So it's kind of a neat story to tell.
Now, along the way, you've worked on a couple of really interesting projects. Can you fill our viewers in on them?
Well, the projects, what I do for a living and what my company now does for a living is we sell healthcare software. So we wrote the first DOS-based software for chiropractic offices, chiropractic physical therapy. So back in the day, when the IBM personal computer came out, it was out for about 2 years and maybe a year and a half. And the thing was supposed to flop. It was never supposed to go anywhere. And yet IBM sold 1 million of them. And so there was no software. There was Microsoft, there was IBM, and yet no software. So this fella, Don Birish, got me involved in helping to write a DOS-based system. And it did, if you looked at it today, it does absolutely nothing. I mean, it printed a claim form. It printed a claim form and it stored a little bit of data, but everybody was using typewriters back in those days. So if you could create a claim form and get a medical office paid, that was a big thing. But we went from there into full-blown now, and 35 years later, electronic health records and scheduling and billing and reminders, and patients can schedule their own appointments online with our software. So it's now a substantial, offering in the market. We went from 3 employees to 90 sales reps, and we were a household name in our vertical market. And now the market is much more mature. There's a lot more competitors, but I'm 35 years into it, and I don't really have to worry about being the top dog anymore. I can just be a participant, and the company's doing quite well, actually.
Well, you got a great nugget of information that I'd like, if you would, to pass along to our viewers, and that is somebody who comes into a company like you did, and you actually stated it out loud, as some people might just think about it, is like, I come into this company and you know what, someday I want to own this company.
Right.
Take our viewers through actually how you came to own it.
Well, I became a prominent figure in that company because I was the top sales rep. I mean, I broke every sales record there was. I still own them all. And I don't know, I got good at selling. And I'm a real pragmatic kind of seller. It's not about any salesmanship or anything. I lay it out so logically that back in the day, you had to explain everything. This is abstract selling. You're not selling something you can touch and feel. You have to be able to take a concept and paint a picture for somebody over the telephone and get them to spend $10,000 on your product. And that's the way it always was. And think about it, before the internet, you had to throw a PC, no laptops at the time, a whole full PC with a monitor in the back of your car and drive 5 hours to do a demo and hope you get the sale. So anyway, I became the top sales rep. And as a result of that, I was able to then help Don to design the system and make suggestions about the software. And he put me right up front. He moved me from sales into sales management. And then from sales management, as he got older, he decided, well, I think I need to transition this company away from me and into the employees. So it wasn't just me. He didn't just come to me. He came to a couple of us and said, I'm going to get rid of the company and you guys have first shot at it. And I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And I think he took it seriously after a while because I really dedicated myself to his company. And I guess I look at a lot of folks these days and I don't see that kind of dedication sometimes in companies where you start when you're 25 years old and here you are 60 and you're still doing the same job.
Yes.
That requires some pain and dedication. It wasn't always pleasant. It wasn't always there were many times I thought I'm nuts for doing this any longer, but you stick it out and eventually, hopefully with a lot of hard work and dedication, it works out. So literally Don flew to me in Erie when I was 25 years old. When I heard he was about to divest himself of the company, I flew to him and I said, Don, I would really like the chance to move this company forward and make it live beyond you and your lifetime and get it to survive another generation. And he said, well, let's talk about that. And so we worked out some details and we got the thing done. And that was 2006 is when the final transaction took place. So we're here now in 2020.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Have you been affected at all by the current pandemic and what's going on with that?
We have. I wouldn't want to be starting a vertical market software company right now. It's tight. The offices are under a lot of pressure to see just patients that are essential patients. And beyond what the government says you can and can't do, people are just frightened. They're like, well, if I was having a need for open heart surgery or some critical kind of must-have medical procedure, well, I got to get that done. But my back hurts. I think I'll wait until I don't have to, deal with the COVID. So yeah, we've been affected by it. We've also been very lucky. We were able to keep all of our employees completely employed, and we took advantage of some of the funding that was out there through PPP and EIDL, and we just kept everybody working. But the most important part, and this is a message for everybody, is as a CEO and owner of a corporation, you could be one of those guys that comes in and collects a big paycheck and has a big payday. But my partner and I have a partner in this business, decided not to do that, that we were more about full-on investing for the corporation. And so we dedicated ourselves to creating an emergency fund for this company, and we did it a long time ago. And so, we have the privilege and we're lucky to be able to coast for a while and not really worry too much about where sales are happening right now. So yes, it's affected us, but we planned for a rainy day, and I think we're going to be just fine.
Well, that's a credit to you and your partner, that's for sure. We've talked a bit about your college, water polo career, and we've talked a bit about your business career. Our viewers and I would be interested in how you feel your college water polo career actually impacted, if it did, your working career.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I can say emphatically that I literally learned more from my water polo career than I ever did from my academic career at Slippery Rock. And that's no slam on the university. The university, I got a good education there. But what I learned from Richard Hunkler and my teammates, and, I don't know if everybody knows, but most people know that I refereed water polo for 34 years. Mm-hmm. And I would be remiss in not reminding everybody that's listening that I spent a lot of time with Lauren Bertacci, who at the time was the director of officials, and he is absolutely brilliant. And so between Hunkler and then my 34-year career of refereeing water polo and all the experience that I got, in fact, I refereed you at one of the Premier League events. You were in the pool. And that was quite a privilege. I was so happy that you were there. I felt like very lucky because a former Olympian is in the pool, and I hope I get that call right. But
well, I hope I didn't chirp you.
No, you were so good. I mean, it was just really, those experiences were just wonderful. So I did well nationally on the scene. I was never a FINA referee, but I showed up at some big tournaments and I got to meet a lot of nice people, and I learned a ton. So my water polo experiences in college, after college, and for all the years that I refereed, way more formative than any university degree I could have ever gotten, even if it was Harvard or Yale.
All right. Well, have you ever found yourself in a situation in your business career where you stopped and you said to yourself, I can draw from that, whatever that is, from my college water polo, and then you're able to deal with the situation? Has that ever arisen?
Yeah, the dedication, first of all, morning practice at 5:30 and an afternoon practice and 6 hours a day in the pool, and pain tolerance and perseverance and dedication and dealing with disappointment. Those are all things that I think everyone can draw from, and I most certainly drew from. There were days in my career and it was a pressure cooker when we had all those sales reps. And make no mistake about it, Don was a hard driving manager. I mean, he was tough, a micromanaging person. And there were days when I thought, man, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. And it was that pain tolerance that I learned. We all learned it, but I learned it in particular. And that, you work out and you work out hard and you do it all the time for that 160-minute game and then the next 60-minute game. So if you look at the ratio of the time you spend in the pool preparing for an event versus the event itself, the time differences are radical. And so you apply that, in my opinion, you apply that to business as well. Like, work really hard, work through the pain, work through things you don't like doing, because the rewards will be there for you. That's what I think I take that, that's really the biggest lesson.
Well, it is a great lesson and to pass on to our viewers. Many times people in your situation get asked the question this way, what would you say to your younger self? But I like to approach it from the exact opposite way. I'd like to know what you think that Russ Thompson, Slippery Rock College water polo player, would say to Russ Thompson, CEO, today.
Oh, well, Russ Thompson's water polo player got a chance to say to Don Birish, CEO, I'd like to own your company. So that could be part of the conversation. I don't know. I think it's that's a hard question because, as I mentioned at the onset of this interview, I was pretty much deer in the headlights back in the day. I'm a late bloomer. I've always been a late bloomer. Most of my teammates were flourishing around me before the lights came on, for me, to be honest with you. But when the lights finally did come on, I hit the ground running. So I don't know that the Russ Thompson of a 19-year-old or 18-year-old Russ Thompson would have much of anything to say to CEO Russ Thompson, but CEO Russ Thompson says to 18-year-old water polo Russ Thompson, get your butt in the pool and dedicate yourself, because you have no idea the rewards that are going to be paid to you, both personally and professionally, and the friends that you and colleagues that you will meet throughout your lifetime. It will make a major impact in your life. Lynn Kaczmarek, I have to mention her name as well. Mm-hmm. Lynn was the assistant coach, and she was MVP in the World Cup my freshman year. She was actually in the water helping me understand that I didn't know anything about water polo back in those early days. So, meet those people, draw from their experiences. I chat with Lynn on a fairly regular basis, and so I feel pretty blessed about that. And I know that's maybe not exactly the structure of the answer you were looking for, but that's pretty much how I would answer it.
That's an excellent answer, and leads me into my final question, which you touched on a bit, and that is that we've got lots of high school water polo players and their parents who are now looking at colleges, and we've got college water polo players who are now looking at careers post-college. Any advice for them?
Yeah, 100%. The thing that I have learned is get a STEM job. Like, go to STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Go in that direction, because you're pain tolerance will also get you through those educational opportunities. But know that not many people are playing water polo professionally and supporting their families with what they did in water polo. But take the discipline of daily in the pool and working hard and getting that work done and plow that into a well-proven career path, I'll say. I just think that I'm in technology myself, and I look around some folks that didn't take the STEM path, and they get to their 50s and they get to even their 60s, and sometimes they're out of work and have no way to get back into the workforce. And yet people that are in STEM jobs, I think, have a much easier time of being relevant in a market. So that would be my advice to any young player, young person, even my kids. It would be get a STEM job, seek out the things that are hard to do, because the things that are very difficult to do academically and career-wise are the ones that reward you the most. And that goes back to putting in the work in the pool. Do the hard work and you'll be rewarded later in so many ways, including career.
Well said. He followed up his college water polo career at Slippery Rock to become the CEO and owner of a software company. Russ Thompson has been my guest today on CWPA Remote. Russ, thanks so much for sharing your insights on how college water polo has affected your working career, and your other insights have been really great.
I am so glad to have had the opportunity to share. Thank you for your hard work for water polo, and appreciate the time we've spent together.
Well, and I have appreciated it too. Until next time on CWPA Remote, this is George Gross Jr. wishing everyone the very best in and out of the pool.